You're listening to the RyAngle Podcast, starring Ryan Hoeger and Ryan Eastwick, and sometimes other people named Ryan. And now, here are some Ryans. All right. Well, hello, Ryan.
Well, hello, Ryan. Welcome to the RyAngle.
Thus begins episode 0 of the RyAngle. Cheers.
No scripts.
No scripts. No planning. No reason to be wasting our time on this project, but here we are.
Here we go.
No, so you're the fellow that suggested this originally. So do you want to? So I guess I should say what episode 0 is, if anyone actually ends up listening to this. So episode 0. This is where Ryan and we got our podcast set up. We both got some microphones. We got some software. We have never done this before. We've attempted to make it sound decent, but we don't know how this is going to work. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone, and we're going to talk about why we're doing the podcast and what we want to get out of doing the podcast. And the podcast is going to be the subject of the podcast. It's a recursive, like Gödel-Escher-Bach thing. And yeah, but Ryan's the one who's suggested the podcast to begin with. So I should say Ryan. I'm Ryan Eastwick.
Ryan.
That's Ryan Hoeger. East and Hoags respectively. So Hoags, why did you suggest that we do this?
Well, there's certainly an element of it that's going to be a shameless plug for my artistic website. And, I've actually been thinking about motivations more and more this last week. So I think I'm going to start off with what will probably be a recurring theme of digressing into like personal motivations instead of talking about the issue at hand. But since the issue at hand actually relates to personal motivations, I don't think that's out of line. Why this podcast? I think part of it is to kind of explore our own philosophies. Both you and I and other Ryans that we've encountered have had kind of a philosophical bent, sort of figuring out why people do the things that they do and why we're interested in our own motivations, and thinking about the world and sort of how it is. And I feel like I'm conceited enough that some of those thoughts about the world and its condition might actually have some merit. And talking about them is a good way to flesh them out and expound on them. So kind of a combination of a way to sharpen each other's philosophies and each other's understandings of why things are the way they are. Hold on, my computer's not plugged in here. There we go. I guess mostly as a means for developing our own thought processes. I think that's the primary motivation, really, is a way to develop our own thought processes through conversation, like sort of a Socratic method of thinking about what we're thinking about, since I know I have a tendency of running over my own thoughts in my head over and over and over and not really getting anywhere with them, and kind of bringing them out and talking about them with you, Ryan. And helps me get them out of my own head. And then if it turns out that somebody else in the world actually wants to listen to the nonsense that's coming out of our faces, then that's even better. We can get a third person, or maybe even a fourth, to so that's right. And personally, I would consider this a wild success if like I said, a third or even a fourth person had any interest in it.
Yeah. And so I think we started talking about this when Hoags came to my place here in Tennessee. I'm in Tennessee. He's in Oregon. And we had such good conversations going on hikes and whatnot. And we were like, well, these are funny and maybe somewhat insightful. And we seem to have a good, like, I feel like more comes out of my head when we're bouncing ideas off each other than just myself. I think there's definitely huge synergy there. when our brains are bandying about. And then, like you say, to have the conceit of maybe this would be useful to someone else. But I've that's something I've been thinking a lot about. I think that a point of view which is unique. I think a point of view in and of itself is a gift that you almost have a responsibility to share once you get to a certain age. My favorite authors or podcasts or whatever, these are people whose like mind I like inhabiting. I just like putting on my let's look at the world through the poet David Whyte's glasses and see what things look like here. And I like looking at the world through Hoeger's glasses, and maybe that's why we're calling it the RyAngle, our angle on the world. So let me see. I made some notes here that echoed some of what you were talking about. As to the purpose, so yeah, to I think sharpen some of the ideas. I had that idea a couple of years ago that said, what, I really need to sit down. I need to write. I need to get creative, because I have this idea like there's something in my head that might be worth sharing or refining or working with, and it's all up in here. And like the scary part of that is like maybe there isn't. Maybe. And I don't know if you have that as well, but you're like,
yeah no I hear that.
maybe if I give my all to some creative endeavor, you will find that, because you don't know until you plumb that well what is down there, and whether or not there's any substance to it, and whether or not it's useful. So there's a there's a raw, like naked thing, if I can call this like art or any sort of creative expression, which I've never really done much of in my life, and I'm feeling that anxiety a little bit of the artist for the first time. It's like, oh shoot, if I put some, maybe I don't have something that's worth a damn out there. You've made a lot of art in your life, and you have a project you're working on right now. Is that something that you feel as in do you feel that anxiety, like maybe this isn't worth sharing, and how do you deal with that? And
oh yeah, absolutely. And I've had the incredible good fortune of working with some really world-class artists during my career. In particular, a man named William Cochran, who does monumental public art paintings, and sculpture, glass and paintings that literally will last for 5,000 years if they're not destroyed. Like, he uses mineral-based paints and does these public art murals that people walk by daily and don't realize that the people painted walking with them on the wall that they're walking by aren't real. Like, they'll walk by them for months or years and finally go, hey, that's not like another commuter, that's a painting. Wow. Birds land on this guy, try to land on this guy's painting. Like, I was very blessed to work with this man, and it never goes away. Like that sense, there's always the voice in your head saying that this is worthless, you're not good enough, what do you possibly have to contribute with this, you'll never be a good artist. Like, he's worldwide recognized for these public, and every time he sits down to paint, he's got that voice in his head going, god damn, you're terrible. Like, is that a stick figure? Like, what color is that? What's wrong with you? And most of the workshops he does, which I was again blessed to be able to take, are dealing with that sense of despair as an artist. That the best strategy he's come up with is that you don't try to contradict it, because it is legitimately a part of you. But what you do is you just thank it. Like, you basically sit that voice down and say, thanks for the input, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Hey, real quick, are you I think you should have your I'm getting a little bit of echo when I speak. You should have your headphones plugged into the back of the mic.
Yeah, I have those, but I don't have them in, so maybe that's why.
Yeah. There you go.
Testing.
Can you hear yourself in real time? Okay.
Yeah. I could hear myself fine through the computer speakers, so I wasn't too worried about it. But I didn't think about how the computer speakers would then also feed back into the headphones. So yeah, I'll put those in.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. So I'm actually really conservative in a way in my approach to things in life, and that I like the things I spend my time on. I like the worst case scenario to be something that I could live with. And so, with choosing a career, I'm like, is going to school for this going to be fun, even if I don't make it through school or something, or if I, die in the next 3 years, is that going to be cool with me? So with this, it's like, well, the worst thing that's going to happen is I have an excuse to sit down with Hoeger and have some conversations that get recorded for posterity. So it's all good, like no pressure. It's also supposed to be fun because that's one of the, I just, we have fun when we're having chats and using our faces. So, let's not get too terribly serious about it. But
no, and I think especially when you get you get personalities like Joe Rogan and whatnot, and then thinking, wait, if Joe Rogan is in the universe with his, I think, tens or hundreds of millions of listeners, do I have something equivalent to say? And I think probably, yeah.
Do we have something with that, mass appeal? No,
no, probably not. But I mean, the other
thing
too is you never know until you try. Do I have something with that mass appeal? I have no idea.
I don't know. Maybe people want the RyAngle. Maybe people want a rye sandwich.
I mean, it's a unique angle. If I can hijack for a little minute and just step back to so you were asking about like art projects and whatnot too. Mm-hmm. That's something that, I'm constantly examining my own motivations to a point where it really isn't very helpful, but I still do it. And one of the things I really discovered is that, I did have a career as an artist, and I continue to have a career as I'm wearing one of my own shirts. I feel like it's pretty well done. But at this point in my life, I don't want to do art for a living, or really even as a major. I don't think what I'm trying to say and sort of express as a person in my life here can be done through visual art by itself. I don't think that's possible. And so at this point, I'm kind of floundering around looking for ways because I feel like I have something to say, and now I'm trying to sort of flounder around finding ways to say it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this can be a major part of that, where we get on here and talk about things. I kind of despair of visual art as a medium of really getting a complete message across. It's so open for interpretation, and I don't necessarily want to only express what I'm thinking through that. Like, I have a lot of things. So I don't know, we work on boats as well. Ryan and I both work on ships, which is another way in which our lives form a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
And I feel like even that's kind of an expression of that, that's an expression of the way you view the world, is that you want to like be involved in the functioning of humanity. And that's part of why I'm engaged in the professions that I am, is that I want to be engaged in the functioning of humanity, moving goods and cargo and being part of the industrial beast.
Yeah, I think a lot of my favorite.
Yeah,
I think a lot of my favorite, especially American authors, like your Ralph Waldo Emerson types or John Steinbeck, these people, they felt almost responsibility to get their hands dirty and be involved in the things of the world, like Henry David Thoreau. All these people, they weren't disconnected from the ground level. And so I feel you on that. I would hate to be just sort of floating above everything on some ethereal plane of simply abstract ideas and trying to share those. So I like the fact that there is something that is very concrete that keeps me grounded, that is for the moment the way I make my money. And then we get to have half the year off, so we're on vacation about 6 months out of the year. And during that time, it's just totally free flowing. There's no, other than the minutia of just trying to get by with everyday life and running errands, there are no huge pressures on me. And there's been this, it's more, people say, oh my gosh, to have 6 months off for vacation, isn't it wonderful? And it is, but it also presents, there's this like existential question that's presented to you that probably only people who are retired or independently wealthy at a young age have to deal with, which you're like, what should I do with my time? And more and more, I feel like, I really should be doing some sort of creative endeavor. So when I'm not doing this, I'm going to be doing a fair amount of writing. And I hope that this, like speaking extemporaneously about things, feeds the writing and back and forth. They're two different mediums, oral and writing, but I hope that they, like, the ideas we develop here feed the writing, and I hope that the writing feeds the ideas that we talk about here, and that they can build on each other. I think another, let me see, I'd made some notes about my motivations, and we actually hit a lot of these points about seeing if we have anything to say. So a few things that I hope that it would accomplish. One of them that we had talked about when you were visiting here is, and we're going to have to walk a fine line here, I would like to model like healthy, vulnerable male to male conversation where people sort of, you drop the pretense and you stop trying to be, you can, I don't know, healthy men talking about their emotions and struggles in a way that's actually like supportive. I feel like women are way, way, way better at this. I see Allison with her friends and just the way women get together and support each other if there's a bad time in their life. And both of us were we discovered in independent little holes with regards to sort of an existential midlife crisis, and thought that we were completely alone in that, and felt some kind of solace from knowing that we weren't. And I feel like men we're really bad, at least I am, at reaching out to other people or finding, I feel like I've got to be tough on my own, or that nobody gives a shit. And so if we can just like shed some light on the average, not just male condition, but human condition, and the fact that it's okay to talk about this shit. Now we've got to think, family friends are going to be listening to this. The other thing I wanted to talk about with you with logistics is, work might be listening to this. So there are probably at some point, who knows? So there are certain topics that we might just have to stray away from. I don't know. How do you think about filtering filtering yourself for an audience?
There's a necessity for it. Yeah, I definitely hear that. Like what you say about work, for sure. There's definitely things, there may or may not be things that I do in my off time that I wouldn't want to broadcast on the internet.
Or you have, yes, or we have done, certain anecdotes that you might not want to share.
You must not be named. Yeah, I hadn't really considered that as part of the actual show discussion, but that's a good call. Yeah, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. There's definitely some aspects of life that don't need to be broadcast to the internet and put on display for everything to see, especially.
I'd say we'll try to be as vulnerable as we can without jeopardizing our careers or being unfair to other people in our lives. I think I feel like that's a fair way to put it.
Yeah. I think that's a reasonable way.
Yeah. Let's not talk about anyone in the way that we don't want 100% sure they wouldn't want to be talked about. But we do want to get to the meat of just, one of the things I love about you and my friends who are dearest to me is they're people who are very serious about this business of being human. And they're constantly in the process of trying to figure out, what is this place? What is this ship I'm driving of this little human meat body? And how do I be a better human? And everybody has sort of different answers for that. But as long as they're serious, and I think that seriousness comes from like just an existential awakeness and a sense of the, extraordinary rare gift that life is. There's both a seriousness and a lightness that comes from that. And maybe that's part of the existential perspective that we can convey and embrace. But people who think like that, I think that's a good perspective from which to approach some of the milestones in life. Like we were thinking episode 1 is going to be about our experience of the midlife crisis, which we both thought we were immune from, but lo and behold, some of it hath come, not in the form of a sports car and a blonde bimbo on our side, but in other forms. So the other thing, so I have a concern. I have a concern about the podcast and the sorts of things that we're going to talk about. Okay. How I am concerned that it will devolve into stoner talk. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I mean, Joe Rogan was not an example that I gave for no reason.
Okay. Meaning I'm concerned that you get on a topic and we're like, consciousness, man, and it's just sort of vacuous. Who gives a shit? I've heard this story. I've heard this at a party before, but maybe that's my voice telling me like nobody cares that you were talking about.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely an aspect there. There was actually a random Reddit comment that I saw that I thought was pretty good. That like they were talking about what is the effect of marijuana really, and one person said, well, what's really going on is you don't really have any more profound thoughts stoned than you do sober. What the herb does is there's a sense of temporary bimboification, is what this Reddit commenter said, so that the thoughts you have seem more profound and you don't shoot them down as easily as when you're not so impaired, or so I've heard. And I feel like that, and I think that's a lot of it. There's that sense of quieting that critical voice for a minute. And it's true. Like, I would not expect to cover any philosophical ground that hasn't been covered by somebody else better than me. I don't.
Yeah, sure.
But I am planning to cover it myself, which I haven't done before.
Yeah. The who was it? Alan Watts said a philosopher is a sort of intellectual yokel that stands a mouth agape at things other people take for granted. And that's both great. Like, it kind of what the effect of weed you were talking about was. It's both great to be like, fucking a tree, dude, a tree, and have like,
a tree,
and have your mind blow by it. But other people are completely justified in rolling their eyes and just going, oh my God, some of us have things to do. So that's, I get both. I get both perspectives, but it is really nice to quiet the voice there for a second.
Because that inner critic is useful and necessary for your day-to-day life. Like, I was talking with my wife about this the other day, that you can have judgment without being judgmental. And you have to exercise judgment about what thoughts and what people and what things are important to keep in your life and what's important to cut out or suppress or use at this particular time or this particular place. But then it's also still important not to be judgmental and say that these things are shit or these things should be done away with. It's just that right now it's not useful.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the mastery that you need, and that's what separates, say, a Van Gogh from an Emerson, is that Van Gogh wasn't able to use his judgment.
Yeah, I'm reading this really good book right now called Nonviolent Communication that I would recommend to everyone. And he makes a distinction between he calls them judgments and observations. And it's this really, really useful distinction for dealing with someone you've got a problem with, right? So you might say, oh, there's this guy at work. Oh, what's the problem with him? Oh, he's an asshole. Okay. Well, no, literally, what does he do? Literally describe the literal thing that's being done. Oh, well, he's always such a dick. No, no, no. Okay. Well, he's very impatient. Okay. In what ways is he impatient? And you get down to the nitty gritty of literally describing what this person does that's bothering you. And then you identify he calls them needs that's not meeting. So I have a need, this person's not meeting it by acting in the way that they are. And that is way more specific, accurate, and helpful than just saying someone's a dick, because it's just that I feel like that's way too simplistic and it closes you off. And then what getting there does is now I can go talk to that person and say, hey, Bob, I need to be able to have peace and quiet while I'm working. You're being loud. Could you please stop that? And instead of just bitching about Bob behind his back and saying that he's this obnoxious person. So you're not putting your layer of judgment on it, which is like a wedge. Yeah, I completely feel you on it. But to do that with ourselves,
Yeah.
To do that with ourselves and be more open to, not judging ourselves and specifically identifying, okay, here's a behavior that I have that's not serving me. How is it not serving me? And how can I change that behavior?
And yeah, the specificity, like, parent stories can be intolerable, but I'm going to pull one out anyway.
Okay.
So my younger son, right, he was like 5 at this point, I think. And, he was going to the bathroom like every 5 minutes. I forget what it actually was, what the actual problem was. I think we needed him to get to bed, and he just kept going pee over and over and over. And finally we told him that he just needed to hold it, right, and then go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he's back in the bathroom, and we're like, what? Like, we just had this conversation. What's going on? I go in there, I open the door, and he's holding his penis. He's holding it.
Mm-hmm.
And that specificity of, okay, the thing that I intended for you to do versus the thing.
Oh, hold it. I totally welcome the parent stories, by the way, because I don't have my own children, and so that's such a good that's a window, a lens through which to view the world. That I will never have children, and so it's very useful to hear things from that perspective for those of us who are childless, godless heathens who only live for our own pleasure.
I feel like it's an easy thing for that separation between people are parents and people aren't parents, and there's kind of a lot of tension. I feel like for our generation especially, there's a lot of tension between people who are parents, people who aren't parents, and expectation for parents and expectations that parents have of people who aren't parents. And one of the many cultural divides that we're sort of haggling with at this point. But there just are some perspectives that you get raising a human being that you don't otherwise, and of course vice versa, ones where you can just explore yourself and the things you enjoy doing that you can't as a parent. So yeah, I'll keep telling parent stories, but I'll try not to turn this into this is Ryan telling parent stories time.
Sure, yeah. But you can't help if your mind is synthesizing from your experience. I know I was in the military 10 years ago, and for that first year or two, man, you just can't help, because it's been like the past 5 years of your life. Then you find yourself being the guy that tells his stories about being in the military all the fucking time, and nobody cares, right? It's not that I'm trying to see. I was worried that I came across as trying to seem cool or trying to seem like, oh, I'm this, like that was my whole identity or whatever. But it's the life you've been living for that long.
And especially in that first few years, I'd imagine that's your whole life, because they do try to immerse you in it real completely.
Yeah. So nuts and bolts. How long do we want this thing to be? We're saying maybe an hour ish felt right.
I think that's probably the other question too, is how much do we want to edit it? Like, do we want to keep it like talk for however long and then edit it down to an hour, or talk for an hour and edit it down to half an hour?
Okay, so to invoke the god of podcasting, Rogan, he doesn't edit anything. But I feel like unedited with exceptions is probably going to be the best part, like if there's just, you need to run off and take care of something with the kids or whatever, we're not just going to let somebody sit there and listen for a few minutes. But I just do not have the patience and the time to try and think about, let me edit this into a more zippy, entertaining hour for people, right? And I feel like you might, kill the thing in the process without meaning to, because there's just a natural camber to conversations that would get lost if you chop the thing up. So I'd like to see how it is, unedited.
I'm with you there. I'm really of the same opinion. I wanted to throw it out there as an option, but I agree. I think even the pauses between statements, like if we're thinking about it, anybody listening is probably going to want to take a second to think about it too.
Yeah, and anything that I've taken an ungodly amount of like podcasts and audiobooks and stuff usually, and it's it's an adult. I think that whole space has proved that people can take a relaxed adult pace, and that if we were making something for children, you would have to do the very choppy, exciting YouTube thing, but we're not doing that. We're making something for, at very least, our friends and family who love us, or nieces and nephews down the road. I had thought about that as a purpose for the podcast. Is just like, I wish, how cool would it be if your great grandfather had a podcast and you could listen to it, right? So this might be something that, for me it's nieces and nephews, for you it's your children. I would hope that later, that when they gain the maturity sometime in their 20s or 30s to give a shit that their dad was a cool guy, that they could listen back on this, and it would be a really easy way to sort of immerse themselves in who you were as a person and your ideas. So I think it's cool to just have there for posterity.
Narrowing, or coming back to the justifications for it, I'd like to point out that you just implicitly accepted that you are a cool guy. I'd like to support that.
I thought I accepted that you're a cool guy, but okay. I know we're just gonna have to get over it. Like the idea that you would open your face and that someone would we're not even gonna get paid for this, but that someone would not pay us, but at least like take time where they could be listening to anything else to listen to our faces. You're just like, you just got to put that aside and be like, okay, that's it's a possibility. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. Hey, all I could say is this: I'd listen to us.
Theoretically.
If I was
actually, no, I already said it.
If I wasn't me, but I was me enough to have similar tastes and like something like me, I guess everybody likes listening to themselves. So whatever.
That's true.
I don't know. Well, maybe that's not true. Does everybody like listening to themselves? I certainly can be a talker and Eastwicks are talkers when things get going. So this is also a place to put, I don't know, do you rant at your wife on a semi-regular basis?
Oh, I mean, fairly regularly. Yeah, I'll get going.
So I hope that this is like a pressure relief valve, that it's like the little thing on top of your fucking rice cooker that goes psh and lets the steam out.
Yeah.
That this is just a place to put some of this shit. Like, honestly, I could see doing like 20-minute, because we've had these phone calls where you've called me up, especially when things were like really, really deep in the shit with the Trump insanity and people taking over the White House and whatnot, where you've called me up and been like, am I crazy? This is insane. What the fuck is going on here? I could see us doing like a quickie, like, okay, emergency episode right now where we just like, well, just call them like a sanity check. And we can just like rant about something for 20 minutes. So we don't have to absolutely just go off on our family. It's like one of my sweet girlfriend just nods. Yes, Ryan. Yes, that is a very concerning thing. So it'll be nice to have somewhere to put that. I think you said something similar, like you've been going over ideas in your head and you're like, okay, I'll bring it up on the podcast and I'll make some notes. Yeah, I'm going to try to keep a little like a comp book of things I think about or read that I think would be cool to bring up. So I wanted to talk about next time the existential, we're calling it the existential midlife crisis.
We
So
call
with it
we call it the existential blues.
the existential blues. So like, yeah. So we wanted to cover that. What else did you want to cover? What sorts of things, if people ever make it past episode 0 of the RyAngle, what sorts of things will they have to look forward to? What are we going to actually cover on this bitch?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, kind of the baseline question that I wrestle with is sort of, does anything matter?
Okay.
That's a rough one.
Yeah. Does anything matter? What shall we do? So this actually feeds and comes to, it's kind of perfect actually for my writing project, because I am interested in this, like, given the facts, what should we do? And so you could you see having a different episode track, like honing in on a different angle or aspect of like the existential dilemma? Like,
yeah,
okay.
I mean, that's one that I'll kind of stop in the middle of, even at work, I'll kind of stop and be like, why is any of this happening? Like, am I like, I'm this weird meat creature that's performing a task right now in the middle of the ocean. Like, why is this happening? Why am I not a fish or an atom or like just a weight? Like, why is any of this? And I don't know, that's kind of a large question. I don't know if it's something that would be even tackleable in a podcast format, but and then, you know, you can get into the more Zen aspect of is any of it even happening? I don't know, that might be going a little far afield for us, but that's I guess the thing that I'm banging my head against most days.
Yeah. Well, other people have been successful with that. I want to say his name is, I have an awful memory, by the way, for anybody listening, so I'm going to struggle with names all the time. I want to say his name is Duncan Trussell. He's been on Rogan. He has a podcast that got turned into a absolutely bizarro psychedelic cartoon by the same guy that did Rick and Morty, I believe. It's either Rick and Morty or Adventure Time. Midnight Gospel is what it's called.
Oh yeah, you were showing me that one.
Yeah, so Midnight Gospel. So Midnight Gospel is just some guy. He's a curious enough, likable dude who just gets on there and it's like, whoa, man, given that the universe is infinite, like, what should we do? And people, this is what I have to remember about. One of the things that makes me roll my eyes a little bit at what I'll put in the broad category of stoner conversation, which is like amateur existential analysis. One of the things that makes me rolls my eyes about it is I've had those conversations 1,000 times and I've heard them 1,000 times, but new people are being born that have not or have been concerned with their own little corner of the universe and they have not. This isn't trite to everybody, right? To hit these things. Yeah.
And that, I think that plays back into that self-worth and is this worth it kind of question of, okay, just because I have thought about this ad nauseum doesn't mean everybody has.
Yeah.
In fact, you can pretty much guarantee that whatever it is you generally occupy your day with thinking about, out of 8 billion humans, you're probably part of a pretty small group that actually spends their day thinking about that.
Yeah.
So your thoughts and your experience have value. Like, that's one thing that jumped at me a couple of days ago. Is 8 billion humans. Like, you know, you do all these things where you have to kind of look at big numbers and remind yourself that your mind can't process big numbers. Like, oh wow, the actual number of individuals living on the planet right now is squarely within the categories of numbers that are way too massive to think about, and every single one is an individual. And honestly, that right there could be a topic for a podcast right there. Like, write that down. Write that down.
Well, big numbers.
Big numbers. Yeah, that would actually be a good one.
All right, I'm gonna write big numbers, comma, what do? Question mark.
What do?
Big numbers, what do? Okay, total tangent. But did I send you that video on 52 Factorial?
Yes, I watched it, and that's one thing too, is that I was actually even thinking of that very video as an example of that, how that guy, the 52 Factorial, for anybody who's listening to this and hasn't seen it, you should watch it. 52 with an exclamation mark, the scale of 52 Factorial, I think it was. But we would discuss large numbers. The way that guy discussed it blew my mind, but we would discuss large numbers in a different way that would reach other people.
Yeah. So if people don't know, Factorial is just when it's a way to figure out how many different combinations there are of a particular thing. So you have 52 cards in a deck, and you're like, well, how many possible combinations are there to shuffle this thing? And that's pretty simple math. You just go 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7, all the way up to 52. And we just have really, really, really awful intuitions about large numbers as human beings. And Sam Harris talks about this a little bit with regards to billionaires. Look up some videos on YouTube about like the size of a millionaire's wealth compared to a billionaire. And it's just bananas. Your brain does not have it right. But it turns out the number of combinations of a particular deck of cards is basically infinite. As far as anything a human scale is concerned. You have a far, far better chance. If I said to you, I have a predetermined order of cards and I want you to shuffle the deck, and what is the chance that order of cards is the predetermined order that I selected, you have a far, far better chance of picking a random proton off of planet Earth and having it be the right one, far better than shuffling the right order of the deck of cards. Basically, if you shuffle a deck of cards properly, you can say with almost complete certainty that order of cards has never existed or ever will exist again in the entire universe. So
with functional certainty. Yeah.
The number is so large. So yeah, watch that video on 52 Factorial if you're interested about that. But yeah, and so with that, I would love it if we had some of those topics ahead of time, and then I could go off and do a little bit of research. So I think this is the way that it would be best served, is if we had a few topics and we had a bit of a schedule, and we said, okay, we're going to talk about the existential midlife crisis, and we're going to talk about big numbers, and that way we can go into the world and do some reading and some research ahead of time. A little bit like, you ever listen to Stuff You Should Know?
No.
Okay, so those guys just they pick a topic like graveyards, and then they go out into the world and they do some research on graveyards, and they're like, here's some neat stuff we learned about graveyards for an hour and a half, and it's great listening because they're good personalities, and there's always like an endless amount of topic. But to have some time to go out and find cool YouTube videos or articles to bring people as supplemental material that would lend to the discussion. So just a little bit about how the sausage is gonna get made.
Whoa. I think, okay, so we got a couple topics there, and that definitely deserves some more attention, but I feel like another thing to define is what topics we don't want to discuss. My sense is that we don't want to get too political.
Yeah, it's just too right. Unless I think that might be what the random rant, 20-minute phone calls would be about. But it's just like politics. It's just too provincial of a concern, right? Like if we want to talk about the bigger, more universal, like existential issues that we all face, like what Senator Manchin did this week, I just can't give a fuck about it, right? It's something that's not going to, like, it matters. It matters what happens in politics. It matters what happens in people's lives. There's plenty of people talking about it. Best to believe it. Go listen to them.
Yeah, I feel like that's the case too. Like, it's something that matters and something that we both pay attention to, but it's too much. I feel like it's just this sheer cliff from going to mentioning what happened this week to now we have a political blog, which I'm not.
No. And I hate to think about that would then like obligate me to pay more attention to that shit show. than I want to. Like, no. So yes, not talking about that. I almost feel like there's nothing. I'm willing to get a little weird with it as time goes on. Like, if we just want to talk about like what would life be like for a frog or something that we find interesting.
No, that sounds good.
You know?
Oh, here's one. Whether being conscious, not intelligence, but whether consciousness is present in matter and in animals.
Yeah, panpsychism, or in animals. Yeah, that's a topic that I've thought a lot about and read a lot about, and have like a shelf in my house dedicated to. And I would love to give people the tour to, the intro to that, the sort of tour to here's the questions. Because okay, so one of the things I feel can come across and that I hope comes across, and this is from my center, this is from my heart, that these concerns about the big questions, like, is something else conscious other than me, that I want to be affirming to people, like, yeah, that's a big fucking deal. Like, there's nothing in society that tells you should be thinking about these things, right? But stuff like, what's the meaning of life? Yeah, shouldn't we like figure that out before we step out the door and go about our lives? This is the way I always felt as a child. And my journey of my life has been like taking these questions seriously and figuring them out to the point of satisfaction that I actually can live a life that I'm happy with, and that I feel like has some kind of meaning, and that I feel aware and awake about what's happening in the universe. And what I want to say to people is like, yeah, you can take that seriously, those sorts of questions. And it's also not that hard. None of this stuff is like, there's so much bad thinking. There's libraries and libraries of super complicated bad thinking.
Oh, yeah.
You can get to the, if you haven't heard the legend of the Gordian knot, you can get what's the way to get through the Gordian knot? You take a big machete and you chop it in half. You don't worry about untying the whole thing, right? So you can just destroy entire religions or schools of philosophy in a single blow by taking one of their basic tenets and saying, nope, not true. No way that's true. Just with some decent logic. So what I hope could come across to people is like, yeah, the things that like you are really concerned about life and the universe and why we're here and what's going on. You are absolutely right to be concerned with those things, and it's not as scary or as hard to think about those things as the rest of the world makes it out to be. Like, I'm not that fucking smart, but I think I'm decent at getting to simplifying issues, getting to the core of it, and it's not about being smart, it's about thinking well. So I hope some of that can come across with some of the questions that you're talking about.
So I feel like that would actually be a good topic too, is the Gordian knot. We could do one on that.
Mm-hmm. How do you expound?
Well, the story itself, what it means, and examples of how certain arguments can be cut through in that very simple manner, and how it can be possible to get tied up in the loop-de-loops of a complicated existential argument and fail to see yourself in it.
Yeah. See, yeah, no, that'd be a good one to look at, because I don't know that I've read the actual story of the Gordian knot and know any of the context around it. So it'd be cool to go to that, and then bring a couple examples that we each have to the table of, like, I come from a religious background, and that is all about getting you concerned with tying you up in knots when there's some simple basic things you can just think about for like 5 seconds and you don't have to bother with any of the rest of this shit.
And like with the religious, not to get too detailed on any particular topic right now, but with the religious and sort of societal and cultural pressures, I feel like the machete there is that really nobody knows what's going on. Like, all you know for sure right now is that you're alive and thinking about this. If you really cut everything away, nobody knows why we're doing this or even what we're doing. Like, all I know for sure is that I'm right here, maybe talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is another thing that I hope you could get across is like society is held together through the edifice of certainty, and there is no certainty, right? You
No
are
certainty.
and to the extent that you realize that, I hope that that would lead to a little more human freedom and creativity. Like, hey man, you can approach this whole being a person game however you want. Like, don't, I always thought when I was a kid that everybody else had figured something out that I hadn't because they were so certain, right? And I come to find out, ta-da, like there is no man behind the curtain. No, like even if there might be people that think they're very certain, that think they know, but there's a very the task for, or the test for what qualifies as knowledge with a capital K, is pretty strict, and there ain't much that we actually know. We really are floating in space. That's another thing I appreciate about you or my friends that I think have the existential perspective is I can't hang out with people who are like certain. I find it suffocating. I don't care what it is that you're certain about. I just, whether, you could be, I'm more liberal politically, but if you're just so certain of your thing is absolutely the way to go, I just feel I get suffocated by it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember during the W. Bush years, not to get too political, but I remember like I was very much like, what is this guy doing? But then tried to be really careful every so often to be like, wait, am I wrong? Like, really, am I wrong? Am I looking at this all wrong? Because there's a lot of people who think that I'm wrong, and I could be wrong. Like, I could be wrong about all of it. And I feel like I think that might really be the potentially that could be the pavement below your feet of that existential philosophy, is constantly or frequently at the very least asking, wait a minute, is everything I'm assuming wrong? And then trying to figure out what things that you think every day are assumptions. And I guess that's it. Trying to figure out how often you're making all your decisions based on assumptions, figuring out what those assumptions are, and then evaluating if they're not even necessarily correct, but whether they're useful, and then whether they're correct, because something can be wrong and also useful.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's another good topic. I just made a note. Epistemology. And epistemology is just the philosophy of what is knowledge. So yeah, what do we know? How do we know that we know something? How do we integrate this knowledge together? What do we consider knowledge? So this is something that both philosophy and science are concerned with, and philosophy and science have very different definitions of what that is. So that's something we can get into. And then bringing that down to earth, right? This is another reason why philosophy can bore the shit out of me, is if it's merely an academic exercise, if it's merely like some crazy math that's going on out here, and it's not brought down to and what does that mean for me in my day-to-day life? I just, I think we could bring it down. We could bring it down to like, look at it from we can get to the 30,000 foot level and touch base with that. But I would like to bring it down to ground level and say, well, how does this inform the way that you live your life or think about being a person?
Yeah. How is this? And it's so many, like the assumption that, I don't know, that $1 is actually worth something. Well, I mean, almost by any objective measure, that doesn't make any sense. It's definitely a consensual hallucination among people that money is worth anything. And you could it's a piece of paper, or not even a piece of paper. It's just an idea of numbers of something being worth something. And it's incredibly relative and absolutely just a fantasy. Is it useful? Well, yeah, it's not very useful to assume that money is a hallucination every day. And I have done that. I've done it
right
for a good 8 months at a time where I really didn't use money at all. Actually, I feel like that might be a good topic, is nature of currency and its sort of dreamlike qualities. That could be a good one.
And
is it
had
very
a really
useful in your day-to-day life to assume that money is a fantasy? Well, I guess maybe to an extent. and not like tying your identity to how much money you have, because it's really is a hallucination anyway. But in the sense of going to a storekeeper and being like, this is all a fantasy anyway, what do you mean, man? Like, no, that's not very useful.
Yeah, right. I feel that'll come into the epistemology discussion. It's like there's kind of two sides to this coin, if you'll allow it. Which is
zinger.
Two sides to the Bitcoin. That's the name of the podcast. That's the title of the podcast. Two sides to the Bitcoin. Yeah, there's the objective fact of, bro, it's just a piece of paper, brah. But like, you're not going to be, but then there's the practical fact of, well, everybody, the consensual hallucination means something, right? It means in terms of this, if I go to the store and I give the man $1, I really do get a thing back. And if I go and take the thing without giving him the hallucinatory little paper token, it doesn't work. And maybe I'm going to be in trouble.
It gets more interesting when you start talking about, for a thrown out example, NFTs, where there's been this decision that not even like a physical piece of art, but like not even any kind of copyrights or tangible ownership rights to an image are being exchanged for tangible currency. But the idea of owning something is being exchanged for this tangible currency, and just how bizarre that is. And yeah,
hold on, I haven't thought about that, but I have to pee or I'm gonna die.
Oh my god.
Let's take a break and then have some sort of we'll put a sponsor in here, and at first it's just going to be to go to our individual projects.
Potentially
we'll be sponsored by ourselves.
Some episodes
that
were of the flavor like,
what's the deal with this thing? Okay, where something pops up, like, you know, NFTs, cryptocurrency, and we both go off and try to get our heads wrapped around it, and then speak about it. Would that be within the
Sure, we could do. I think that's fine. Get some, because I feel like that functional philosophy is really what we're going for there, and both taking that bird's eye view, 30,000 foot level, and also looking at specific things and saying, how does this work into our worldview, is a good way to approach it.
I mean, yeah, that fits into the RyAngle aspect of it.
The RyAngle.
I'd
also like to point out that I accidentally made coffee for myself and my wife today, even though she's not actually here. I forgot and made a whole 7-cup pot, and I am almost through it.
How is your relationship to caffeine?
Dependent.
I'm definitely dependent, man. When we're on the boat, we work fucked up hours, and I have a abusive relationship with the bean, because I will attempt to not feel tired working these fucked up swing shifts, and drink lots and lots and lots of coffee to the point that it no longer helps, and then I have to dial it back to where I re-up my sensitivity to the thing, and I have a few terrible days. And yeah, I don't know how to think about it, man. The prospect of going off the bean entirely, it just seems damn near impossible to me. It's like you'd have to take a month off of life, and then I don't know what you'd get from it. But yeah, I'm okay with my caffeinated consciousness. But it can definitely be too much. But
I mean, decaf, but that'd be awful.
No, and I've tried. Well, another thing I have going on is I've realized in my middle age that I have a bit of undealt with attention deficit disorder, which is actually like causes a fair degree of what I thought was my personality is, and my little quirks are just a dopamine deficiency that was unaddressed, which explains lots of my existence. And so I can't, just because of my work, get access to the stimulants that people normally take for this sort of thing. And they might not work for me. I've never tried them, but I can't go get Adderall because you'll piss hot and it won't work, or you'll get fired. So if I want to keep my job, I can't seek normal medical treatment. But I just find, like, unfortunately, caffeine, great for the ADD. Some people, it might make them zippy and more distracted. For me, it absolutely focuses me. And then one that I've struggled on and off with for my life is, like, nicotine. Works great. It's a great drug to get my brain in line. But unfortunately, even in its more benign forms of ingestion, like the little nicotine salt pouches or whatever, let's say you can find something. There are means of ingesting nicotine, like nicotine gum or whatever, that are completely benign. You just get on this roller coaster of awful dependency of feeling good, feeling bad, feeling good, feeling bad, that I just don't really care for. But unfortunately, it focuses me and puts me in a good headspace.
Yep.
A nice mood. But anyway, yeah, man, I feel like we covered a lot. When do you want to get together for the official episode 1? And hopefully between now and then, I will take what we've created here and I will figure out what technical fuck ups we've made.
Yeah. And frequency is definitely going to be a question. I feel like once a month is probably a good minimum as far as releasing these, if we're going to make it a going concern. But with our month on, month off schedules, that could be tricky. We're not going to be able to do that regularly, and as far as recording that often. But I really enjoy doing these, at least so far, so I wouldn't really have a problem with doing it several times while we're both home, and then releasing them kind of periodically.
And how wild is it? We're on the similar schedule, but I was also thinking that because we're doing the local recording, even when one of us is on the boat, as long as we have a way of, like, having a phone conversation, any way of communicating, we can still record the podcast. We might not be able to do the video in HD if one of us is on the boat, but we'll give that a shot in lower quality with a tethered to our phones or something for the video.
Yeah, give it a shot.
But with the
I might be able to free up enough hard drive space to record video too. I was able to make that work pretty well.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I mean, you know how it is at work. You're working crazy hours. You might be tired out of your goddamn mind. And so it'll be.
Yeah. On the boat is tougher. Like I usually just work, eat, and
let's
sleep,
just
really
take advantage of the fact that we're both miraculously on almost the same schedule right now.
Almost identical. I'm going back next Tuesday. What's yours?
I think it's that Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah. Right in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oops.
Oh my God.
I clicked the wrong button. Accidentally. Yeah, no, I would be down when we're home to make this like a weekly thing.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, let's make it a weekly thing, and then we'll have. So the way I kind of envision this is that first, so probably after next time we're home, let's get a few of these in the bag first, so that there's not a huge delay listening to them. And then, yeah, if we record 4, then that would be a bi-weekly thing. Be once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That we could release it. So I can upload them before we go back to work, and then it'll just release like on a schedule. So we both go back to work pretty soon. So if we could, are we going to have any time to do an episode uno before we go back to work, do you think?
I wouldn't bet on it right now. I'm getting ready to close on a house. Like, it could be a little hectic at this point.
Yeah, so let me just spend the rest of the time at home getting my head wrapped around the technical aspect of this.
Think about some more topics. We'll both kind of share some notes.
Yeah.
I'd say plan on getting into it.
And I'll do the audio. I'll do the audio editing, and that's what I need to get my head wrapped around is how do I combine these two audio tracks in a way that sounds good, and how do we upload this to YouTube, and how do I upload this to a podcast publishing platform, and we'll get that all figured out. And then next time I'm home, I'll bring my gear down to Florida where I'm going to be doing the training.
Oh, you're back on that next time.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a mostly simulator class, advanced ship handling thing I'm doing down there for the first 2 weeks that I'm off. But I'll be getting off a little bit early too. So, but anyway, I'll have my gear on me, and I'm doing it on my laptop right now. So the laptop obviously works just fine. I just might, you know what I'm gonna want to do? I'll buy an external hard drive, and I'll record all this stuff to the external hard drive instead of just doing it.
My only concern there was speed. I actually have an external that I can use as well. But yeah.
I don't know if you can record at the appropriate bit rate, but we'll figure those things out. So let's continue to think about topics and brush up, and then we'll hopefully have before next month starts, let's just have the first 4 that we want to talk about done, and then to ring in 2022 we can actually put it out there.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic idea.
Let's see if something that'd be a good way to start the year.
Yeah, you could resolve to do it.
I'm not following you. Can you explain? Cool, man. Well, I think I'm gonna press goodbye on the official. Oh, I also have to look up. Podcasts sound sad when there are no jaunty tunes. We need jaunty tunes to get us in and out of the podcast. So I'll look around and license free music or whatever if you want to try to find something too.
I got a guitar.
Or if you want to put together a lick and record it in a way that's decent and make that the intro or outro, let me know. But we need something. We need jaunty tunes to bring us in and out. People need to get in the mood.
Oh yeah. I'm ready.
Inappropriate low tones really close to the microphone, like I'm whispering in your ear at bedtime. The other question is,
are we going to invite any guests on the podcast?
Guests. Well, at one point we should say that we had toyed with the idea of the only people being allowed on the podcast being people who are named Ryan, which I think is hilarious. But also might be too limiting.
Hilarious, but very limiting. I agree.
So we could have only people who are, because there are a couple, at least one, or a few other big Ryans in our lives.
There are outsized Ryans
who would be excellent on here. So I'm gonna say you're allowed to co-host the show if you are named Ryan. Okay. So you could have like a Flynn on the podcast as a co-host. And that would be if I could imagine doing 3 or doing I'm out of town but you want to do a topic with Flynn and having it just be the two of you. So you're allowed to be a host or co-host on the RyAngle if your name is Ryan. If it's not, then you're a guest. You're not driving this bus. You're hanging out.
Because as the title says, this is the RyAngle.
The RyAngle. Yeah. And if you don't adhere strictly to the implied limitations of the title of your podcast, then what are you even doing?
Why are you even doing it?
No one's going to respect you. That person's not named Ryan.
What are we this isn't the RyAngle.
No, but I feel like no one named Brian should be allowed on at all under any circumstances. It's too close. I feel like you're getting it, like you're edging in on my thing here, and I don't need the confusion. People listening don't need the confusion. Yeah.
It's too much. All
right. So bye, people listening to this sometime in the future. We love you.
Yeah,
be well.
That's true.
This has been the RyAngle Podcast. Music by Tallac, Tallac. You can find more music by him at soundcloud.com/IamTallac.